everyone. We're back. Radio Free Market and myself, Zoe Russell, are here with Dr. Walter Block. And I believe Patrick from Pennsylvania is still on the line. Patrick, can you go ahead with your question?
Yes, I'm still here. Yeah. Dr. Block, I wondered if you could respond to a common concern that people have about homesteading. They'd say, well, that might have been fine for the Wild West in America, but we certainly cannot allow the Russians or the Chinese to come into the Arctic Ocean and grab up all that oil and just say that they own it because they take it. What do you have to say to that?
Well, Canada is really rabid about the Arctic, that they sort of own it, but if they don't do anything to it and someone else does, I don't see why the first come, first served rule shouldn't apply to, take the Antarctic, the southern Arctic. Let's say I go down there and I homestead 10 square miles of it by putting in a couple of buildings and all. Or, now that NASA is falling apart happily because I'm against the government doing this, suppose I go up to the moon and I start homesteading some crater or 10 square miles of the moon, and I build whatever it is, and I have people there. Why shouldn't I get to own the moon? And if a Chinese person does it, we shouldn't allow them to? I mean, if it's virgin territory, the first guy there should get it. Now, if Canada was there first and they've used this stuff, which I very much doubt because there's a vast amount of the northern Canada, and I don't see what the U.S. has got to do with it. This is more a Canadian sort of a thing, but if they're not using it, I'm with the philosophy, use it or lose it. By the way, this really isn't an Austrian question. It's more of a libertarian question, but that's a minor point. How does this idea grab you that the first person who homesteads the land, if it's virgin land and no one else has touched it, should get to own it, even if he has yellow skin, as in Chinese, or whatever skin color the Russians have, I guess the same as us? Why shouldn't they get to be the owner of it? And also, similarly, if there are parts of the Soviet, Arctic that they've never used, why shouldn't someone from Africa be the first to use that and get to own it?
Well, I agree with you, Dr. Block. In fact, that's what, fortunately, I thank you for validating what my answer has been to that. And it does seem to me preposterous that any nation can just lay claim through fiat by just saying, well, we just own the Arctic. I said it's very much like the ridiculous claims of the Spanish conquistadors who came to the eastern shore of North America and claimed all of the continent for the king of Spain.
Oh, that's
just ridiculous.
Look, even within the continental U.S., I flew over, Colorado, Wyoming, the Rocky Mountains. I tell you, the Rocky Mountains are empty. Empty.
Yeah.
Well, suppose some Chinese guy or some Martian landed in the middle of, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, one of those places where the Rockies are. My geography isn't my strong suit. Why couldn't a Martian, a nice peaceful Martian, or Chinese or African or, I don't know, whatever, just say, okay, look, I now have homesteaded this land. I've fixed it up. I've got a corn crop or whatever it is I've done. I don't see the justice of claiming that I own stuff that I never touched.
Yes, well, and especially when we're talking about the most politicized commodity on the earth right now, which is oil. If the Russians, for example, spend what would have to be billions of dollars to drill in the hostile environment of the Arctic, and they pull out oil, that's oil that goes on to the market that increases the supply of oil in the world. Lowers the price of oil. We all benefit from that, and the Russians have spent their money to get it. Why would, just from an ethical standpoint, would they not be entitled to reap the rewards for bringing us a product that we all want?
Precisely, and also it would be nice if the Russians were logically consistent. And what's the northern area of Russia?
Siberia, I suppose.
Siberia, that's it. Now, suppose somebody from Africa or Siberia or Mars, Venus, whatever, goes to the to those areas, and the Russians should be willing to allow that. In other words, if we allow them to come to our so-called territory, they should reciprocate. But whether or not they do, I fully agree with you. Ethics requires that the first homesteader has the best claim on it, much better claim than someone who just said, well, I claim the sun, the moon, and the stars. That's just crazy.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Locke.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks for contributing.
All right, so I guess we'll get back to regulation. I have a quote from Barack Obama, and he said, President Obama, and he said in his address to the nation that oil companies showered regulators with gifts and favors and were essentially allowed to conduct their own safety inspections and write their own regulations. So does this oversight, does this behavior surprise you from a regulatory agency?
Oh, no, this doesn't surprise me one bit. Let me get into the theory of regulation just a little bit. The first theory of regulation is that the free marketplace, free enterprise is no good. They're a bunch of bums. They're cutting corners, and what we need is government to regulate them. Well, this is nonsense because we can trust the cleanliness of the bathrooms in McDonald's much better than we can trust the cleanliness of the bathrooms in the post office. Because if the post office bathrooms are dirty or the service is bad, they don't lose money. Whereas if you go to McDonald's and you don't get the service you want, you go to Burger King and Wendy's or whatever. So competition brings about a better product. But the second one is this thing that Obama is talking about. It's called capture theory. And here the idea is that at one time the market was bad, the capitalists were exploiting the customers, which is ridiculous, but that's the theory. And then we had regulations, and the regulators were regulating the business in favor of the consumer.
Right.
Then what happened is you had capture, namely the regulatee, the business, would start showering them with gifts, or to put it in a labor economics point of view, the way to really get a promotion in the private sector is to go become a regulator, and then go back to the private sector in a higher capacity, and then go back to the regulator. So you sort of have this
revolving door, right?
A revolving door. I couldn't have said it better. I was looking for that word, between the regulator and the regulatee, and the gifts go back and forth. And this is called capture theory. But the third and even more sophisticated level of regulation is what happened with the Food and Drug Administration when that first came in. And there's this guy, Gabriel Kolko, Kolko, historian who did a lot of good work on this. And what he said is, to put it in my own words, capture schmapture. There was no capture. This regulation was initiated by the companies in the first place. Why? Because the big meat-packing companies and the big drug companies were losing market share to smaller upstart competitors. And they said, whoa, we can't allow this. What we got to do is come up with some sort of scheme, the FDA and the meatpacking inspection and the railroad regulation, which sets out regulations which are easier for big companies like us to satisfy because of economies of scale. And also, we're going to put our people in these regulatory bureaus, and we're going to regulate the hell out of these upstart competitors of ours. Now, that's the most sophisticated notion of regulation, where it's the big businesses that are ostensibly the victims of regulation who are actually favoring it and actually starting it. So
right, but
Obama
you call it protection, not regulation.
Yes, a protection racket, precisely.
Right. So all these increased levels of bureaucracy, they drive away business from the upstarts, and they protect the business of the largest companies.
Right. You see, and even the less sophisticated view of Obama, the capture theory, it's absolutely right. There is some capture, but Obama and I draw the opposite conclusions from it. The conclusion that Obama draws from capture theory is, well, we got to get in Simon pure regulators who will not be captured or will not be given gifts. Or we have to stop this revolving door business that you mentioned. And, my attitude is, lots of luck to that. That's the human condition. The conclusion I draw from this capture theory is not we need more and better regulators. It's rather the marketplace is the best regulator. Let's get rid of these regulatory agencies. Let's get rid of the Minerals Management Service. Let's get rid of FEMA. Let's get rid of the Army Corps of Engineers. And let's let people like McDonald's and Burger King and Microsoft and Google run these kinds of things on the basis of market.